brace yourself, because something absolutely mind-blowing just happened. A 5-year-old computer genius hacked into $1 billion syndicate, shattering one CEO's iron grip on power. But here's the most shocking part. He has no idea he's just been destroyed by his own secret child. You won't believe how one innocent hospital birth turned into the greatest twist Los Angeles has ever seen. Stick around, because what comes next will leave you speechless. In that stark, white hospital room, she gasped for breath, pain clenching her body, yet determined to bring new life into the world. Her eyes streamed with sweat and tears as the medical staff hurried around her. Obstetrician, urgent yet calm. "Miss, hang in there. Just one more push. That's it. Breathe. I see the baby's head." With one final, desperate cry, Jo Moo felt the weight lift from her body. The unmistakable sound of a baby's first cry rang out like a promise of hope. Obstetrician, softening. "Congratulations, miss. It's a baby boy." Jo Moo gazed upon her newborn, tears now of joy mixed with overwhelming relief. But that moment of triumph was short-lived. Before she could cradle her son to her chest, two imposing figures burst in, her half-sister and a man she didn't recognize.
"Second miss, is it? You've had your child? Good, because I'm here to see you both off, straight to the afterlife."
Jo Moo's strength was sapped by hours of labor. She tried to protest, but her words came out in panicked gasps. She reached for the baby, but the stranger's arms seized the child.
"That baby, that fiancé of yours, none of it was ever meant for you. Once you're out of the picture, your so-called destiny with Chen Enterprises will be mine."
Horror and confusion flooded Jo Moo's mind, and then someone forced a cup to her lips. The world blurred and darkened. Vague shapes floated overhead, and her sister's triumphant laughter echoed in her ears. That night, Jo Moo nearly lost her life, and lost all she thought was hers. 5 years later. Though many believed her dead, Jo Moo had survived, albeit after a harrowing escape. With no family who would acknowledge her, she vanished into Chinatown's quieter corners before eventually finding her way to the Santa Monica suburbs. She had nursed her wounds, seeking out a secret network of friends for help. Yet she had lost her precious baby boy, and never even learned his name. In downtown Los Angeles, the powerful Chen Enterprises was helmed by the formidable Ethan Chen, known to his few close friends by his Mandarin name, Chen Yixuan. He was an American-born Chinese CEO of a billion-dollar tech syndicate, admired for his philanthropic gestures, rumored to be a huge fan of the Lakers, and notorious for his cold, unyielding manner in the boardroom. None of his employees dared question him, especially when it came to his personal matters. Among those matters, a single child named Kylan, who at only 5 years old was said to be a coding prodigy. Kaylin's origins were as mysterious as the child's unusual genius. Among the hushed rumors, the boy's mother vanished years ago. Or perhaps she had died under strange circumstances. No one dared speak too loudly of these possibilities. In the plush offices of Chen Enterprises, Ethan Chen paced behind his mahogany desk. Rain pattered against the floor-to-ceiling windows, another rare downpour in the City of Angels. He was usually calm, but tonight, tension gripped him. He held his smartphone in one hand, refreshing the GPS tracker that kept an eye on Kaylan. The child had slipped away from his caretakers.
"He's too young for this. Where did my son run off to this time?"
Behind him stood his trusted assistant, Shen Kai, whose job stretched far beyond scheduling board meetings. Shen Kai had been Ethan's right hand for years, helping manage the boy's quirks and unstoppable curiosity.
"Sir, the security cameras show Kalen ran through one of our blind spots near Union Station. I've already posted a missing child alert throughout LA. Once we find him, we'll pay off anyone who helps, whatever it takes."
Ethan paused, resisting the urge to bark instructions. If there was one person in his life he cared for unconditionally, it was Kaylan. Because, in a story few knew, Kaylan was his only living blood relative. So he believed. That child had appeared 5 years ago, presented to him as a secret baby from a one-night stand gone wrong. Ethan had accepted fatherhood with stoic resolve. The boy, after all, had his eyes. Yet something about Colin's origins felt incomplete, a puzzle piece missing. A few blocks away, in the bustle of LA's Chinatown, the missing child tiptoed down an alley. He was small and carried a mini tablet pressed to his chest. Under the flickering neon lights of a street vendor, Kalen peered at the address on a screen. Then he lifted his gaze and spotted someone who made his heart race. She was a woman with dark, silky hair and a quiet determination in her eyes. Zhao Linlin, to most Americans though, to her Chinese friends, she sometimes answered to Mumu or Zhou Mu. He had found her, the face that had haunted his lonely nights, the woman whose photograph he caught glimpses of in secret corners of the mansion. He had often wondered if she was the mother he never met. Now, standing only a few steps away, he felt an inexplicable urge to call to her. Kalen, trembling excitement.
Mom, I finally found you.
His soft voice was drowned by the clamor of a late-night market. She almost didn't hear him, but a second, louder call got her attention. She turned, startled to see a little boy with an angelic face beaming up at her.
Kiddo, what? What did you just call me?
I called you Mum.
That single word made her heart stutter. This was impossible. She had no living child. Or so she believed. Yet something about the boy felt strangely familiar. He had her chin, her dark eyes. A wave of memories threatened to resurface. The hospital, her sister's betrayal, the blurred images of that fateful night. Meanwhile, across the city, Ethan Chen's phone pinged with an urgent text from an unfamiliar number. "Found your son at Spring Street and Ord. Will bring him to you." Though suspicious, Ethan wasted no time. He and Shenkai raced through the gridlocked LA traffic to a nondescript intersection. There he spotted a slight silhouette, Kalen's form, dwarfed by an adult figure standing protectively beside him. Ethan emerged from his sports car, heart pounding but cautious. As he approached, the flickering streetlight illuminated the woman's face. His breath caught. She resembled someone from a lost photo, the woman known only through rumors and heartbreak in the corridors of Chen Enterprises, the one people had whispered was the real mother.
Who are you?
Name's Zhao Linlin. I found your boy wandering the streets. He insists on calling me Mom. Don't worry, I'm not trying to kidnap him.
Kalen, tugging on Ethan's sleeve.
Dad, let's bring Mom home.
The child's innocent words sliced through the tension like a blade. Ethan locked eyes with Zhao Linlin. A swirl of emotions formed, suspicion, hope, and something else he couldn't name. Still, he had other concerns. The possibility of blackmail, the ugly reality that his half-sister's mother, Zhou Xiaomei, was rumored to be Kylene's mother. None of this made sense. Who was Zhao Linlin, and why did his son trust her so naturally? Ethan Chen, hastily, to Zhao Linlin.
Bring him back with me, or I'll send my driver for you, whichever. But I need you to come along. My son won't calm down unless you're there.
Zhao Linlin, rolling her eyes but with a small smile.
Fine, for the kid's sake. But don't assume I'm doing this for you.
Thus, an improbable alliance formed that night under the LA streetlights. The imposing black SUV carried them all to Ethan's estate. Nestled in the Hollywood Hills, it was more fortress than home. High gates glided open on silent tracks, revealing sculpted lawns, a sleek swimming pool, and a sprawling modern mansion with a panoramic view of the city. Inside, a swirl of tension awaited. Maids and staff bowed respectfully as Ethan stepped in. Rumors flew among them. Is she the mistress? Could she be a new nanny? But no one dared voice their suspicions out loud. In the great foyer, a sharp, icy voice cut through the hush. Zhou Xiaomei, haughty, arms crossed.
Who is this woman, and why is she in my fiancé's home?
A hush fell. Zhao Linlin froze, glaring at the intruder, feeling a surge of recognition. This was the face that still haunted her nightmares, the wicked half-sister who once threatened her life. Yet ironically, the staff addressed this woman as though she belonged here. "Fiancé," she heard them say, sending a tremor down her spine. Zhao Linlin, voice low.
What are you doing here, sister?
Zhou Qiaomei, arrogant smirk.
Ah, you must be mistaken. The folks here call me Miss Joe. And you? You're just some random who found Kylan, right? Well, now that the child is safe, you can see yourself out.
Before Zhao Linlin could retort, Ethan's voice thundered across the hall. Ethan Chen, anger barely contained.
Chow Mei, I've told you time and time again not to call yourself my fiancé. The engagement you keep clinging to was never official. The one arranged by my late grandfather was with someone else. So watch your mouth.
Zhou Qiaomei paled, but her defiance didn't waver.
You forget. I'm Kylan's mother. You think you can just erase that?
A flicker of pain crossed Ethan's face. The child had grown up under Qiaomei's claims, but the hostility in the house had forced him to distance her from Kaylin's daily life. Did he believe she was truly the boy's mother? He had once, but that certainty now felt less stable. Zhao Linlin, with silent rage and heartbreak, watched this exchange. If there was truth behind her nightmares, the child that Zhou Qiaomei claimed as her own was actually Zhao Linlin's stolen baby. Yet she dared not speak the suspicion aloud. She needed proof. Zhao Linlin, in a hushed voice, to herself.
So it was you, sister, after all these years.
Later that evening, Kylene had dozed off in his bedroom, an impressive space filled with technology that would dazzle even an MIT graduate. Small code scripts scrolled across multiple monitors, courtesy of the 5-year-old genius's latest experimentation. Zhao Linlin quietly tucked the boy under the covers. Stepping into the corridor, she nearly ran into Ethan Chen. A moment of awkwardness passed between them.
Thank you for tonight. Kylan seems at peace when he sees you. He's never called anyone mom. Not even Chow Mei.
I only did what anyone decent would do. Don't read too much into it.
He hesitated, searching her gaze as though it held answers. Then, stepping aside, he escorted her downstairs.
Stay here for now. I'm prepared to pay you well, 20 checks a month. Blank if you want. Just keep Kalen safe. Keep him comfortable. I'll arrange everything.
For a moment, Zhao Linlin recalled another time, another roof over her head that had seemed like shelter but turned into a cage. She bristled at the notion of becoming someone's paid caretaker. Yet a thought flickered. If she remained close, maybe she could unravel the truth of that night long ago. Zhao Linlin, bravado, hiding her fear.
Fine. But I have my own conditions. Don't expect me to answer all your beck and call. My priority is Kylan. That's it.
Done. Move in tomorrow.
They shook hands. The tension between them pulsed with unspoken questions, overshadowed by the suspicion that Kaylin's real mother was standing right there. At a modest apartment in Pasadena, another figure sat hunched over medical documents by lamplight. This was Song Jin, a longtime friend of Zhou Mu, someone who had rescued her during her darkest hour. Song Jin specialized in holistic medicine, a blend of Eastern traditions and modern therapy. He was thoroughly American in lifestyle, frequently seen wearing Lakers jerseys and discussing the NFL with coworkers, yet he retained a deep respect for the old ways passed down through his own Chinese immigrant parents. As the night deepened, he pored over hospital records. One file in particular kept drawing his attention, the name Zhou Shiyue, Mumu's mother. The details of her untimely death, supposedly caused by a sudden illness, did not match the evidence Song Jin had painstakingly gathered. Poison was a more likely explanation. But who had orchestrated it? Morning arrived with an unseasonably clear sky for Los Angeles. The sun's golden rays swept across Ethan Chen's mansion as house staff scurried about. Zhao Linlin was escorted to the guest wing. She examined the lavish bedroom, the plush carpet, the tall windows showcasing panoramic city views. But beneath the veneer of luxury, she sensed the tension that ran through the house. Ethan's realm was not a home, it was a corporate fortress teeming with secrets. In the hallway, she crossed paths with Zhou Qiaomei again, that perpetual smirk plastered across her face. Zhou Qiaomei, icily, voice dripping with fake politeness.
Living in comfort, are we, Miss Zhao? Enjoy it while you can. If you think Ethan is serious about you, you're even more naive than your mother was.
Zhao Linlin's throat constricted. She wanted to retort with everything she knew, but caution prevailed. She had no definitive proof yet, and the timing wasn't right. Instead, she shrugged off the insult.
Mind your own business, Chow Mei.
Oh, I will, but rest assured, I'm not letting you or that child come between me and my rightful position. You'll see.
Narrowing her eyes, Zhao Linlin pressed on, forging down the corridor. She reminded herself why she had returned to the city, why she was stepping back into this viper's nest. She needed to avenge her mother's death, reclaim her stolen child, and unravel the malicious web that her half-sister had spun. By afternoon, a swirl of new developments engulfed the household. Kaelin, always the curious explorer, slipped into Ethan's study. The boy's nimble fingers scrolled through old digital files. He was too young to fully understand corporate archives, but his coding brilliance found locked folders with suspicious names. Something about these files, bearing references to Zhou Xiyue and Zhou Mu, captured his attention. Just then, Zhao Linlin entered. She found the boy seated on a rolling chair, far too large for his small frame, tapping swiftly at a keyboard.
Kaylin, sweetie, you shouldn't be in here. Your dad's going to be furious if...
Mom, there's something hidden in these records. Something big. But it's password protected. Watch me crack it.
Zhao Linlin's heart lurched at hearing the word mom. But she knelt by him nonetheless, an odd mixture of fear and admiration at the child's skill. In just a few seconds, lines of code filled the screen, and an encrypted file unlocked. It revealed scattered references to suspicious medical documents from 6 years prior. A wave of realization pulsed through Zhao Linlin. The puzzle pieces were assembling. Her mother's suspicious death, her own supposed demise, the child she thought she'd lost. Everything pointed to an old betrayal, with ties to an inheritance. And looming behind it all was the specter of this Zhou Qiaomei. Zhao Linlin, softly, struggling to hide emotion.
Kaylin, do you know how dangerous this is?
I'm not scared. I want to help you. You're the only mum I've ever wanted.
Her throat tightened. She reached out, running a hand through his hair. If only she could protect him from what was coming next. That evening, Ethan Chen arrived late from a business trip with a headache throbbing behind his temples. He had spent hours in negotiations with a major software partner, yet the moment he stepped through the front doors, the tension in the mansion wrapped around him like a vice. He found Zhao Linlin in the living room, her expression distant, protective arms folded around Kailin's shoulders. Zhou Qiaomei stood nearby, annoyance clear on her face, while Shen Kai tried to keep the peace. Ethan Chen, scanning the room.
What happened now?
Zhou Qiaomei, dramatic sigh.
Oh, just your new babysitter snooping around private data. She has no boundaries. And your genius's kid is hacking into locked corporate files.
Ethan's gaze darted between Kailin and Zhao Linlin. The boy's defiance was evident, while the woman's eyes glistened with an unspoken plea.
We weren't snooping. We uncovered something important. It involves the woman your family once arranged for you. The name was Zhou Mu.
A hush fell. Ethan's hand tightened around the folder he carried. He had wanted to forget that name, or at least set it aside, but it refused to fade. Ethan Chen measured caution.
I see. Let me handle it.
Just then, Kaelin stepped forward and tugged at Ethan's sleeve.
Dad, please listen to her.
In the child's earnest face, Ethan saw something striking, an unwavering trust in Zhao Linlin. He exhaled, resigned.
All right. Let's talk in my study. Alone.
They retreated to the study, where city lights sparkled through the glass windows like ephemeral diamonds. In that hushed space, Zhao Linlin revealed bits of her truth, that she had once nearly died giving birth, that she was certain her sister, Qiao Mei, orchestrated it, that she suspected the child stolen from her that night was none other than Kylan. Ethan listened, his composure shifting into shock, then rage, and finally a fragile hope. Could he have been deceived for 5 long years? Was the woman in front of him the real mother of his son? Ethan Chen, voice hoarse.
If everything you say is true, then Kylan, you're his mother.
Zhao Linlin, quietly, almost trembling.
I have no proof yet, but I'm close to getting it. I'm telling you this because I'd rather have your help than your hostility.
Ethan stepped closer, the weight of his secrets pressing down on him. If Kaylin truly belonged to her, the entire dynamic of his family and his heart would shift forever.
I only want the truth. And if you are who you say you are, then I owe you everything.
A swirl of memories he had buried for so long threatened to resurface. A night, 6 years ago, too much whiskey, the vague shape of a woman's silhouette. Zhou Qiaomei's manipulations. Could he have mistaken his partner that night? Zhao Linlin lowered her head, tears threatening to fall. She thought she'd never get this chance, but at least now the question was asked. In the silent, shimmering air of that modern fortress, the stage was set for revelations that would rattle not just one family, but the entire corporate world that revolved around them. And so ended the first chapter of their tangled fates, set against the bright lights of Los Angeles. A child's identity hung in the balance. Conspiracies within powerful families simmered in the background, and 2 wounded hearts stood on the brink of the truth. Whether that truth would bring them together or drive them further into chaos remained to be seen. Ethan Chen's modern mansion gleamed in the early light. Floor-to-ceiling windows gave a wide-angled view of the city below, and the distant hum of LA traffic provided a constant background drone. Inside the stately living room, Chen family staff moved quietly, as though afraid to disturb the tension in the air. Seated on a leather sofa, Zhao Linlin cradled a steaming cup of tea, her thoughts swirling with the revelations of the night before. The child she believed lost, Kylan, was so very close, sleeping in the next room. But the child's father, Ethan Chen, was still grappling with the weight of her confession, that the woman who had claimed to be Kylan's mother, Zhou Qiaomei, had lied all along. Zhao Linlin, inner monologue, voice hushed in narration.
I never imagined returning to LA would unravel so many secrets at once. Mom, if only you were still here, maybe I'd know what to do next.
Just then, the tall double doors swung open, and Ethan Chen entered with a seriousness that set the staff on edge.
Linlin, we need to talk. Upstairs in my study.
She followed him in silence, the echo of their footsteps following them down a bright corridor lined with modern art. At the end of the hallway was Ethan's private office, sleek, glass-walled, with an imposing abstract painting of city skyscrapers behind his desk. A symbol of his own ambitions, perhaps, in Ethan's study. He closed the door, leaning against it for a moment as though steeling himself. Ethan Chen, quiet, controlling a tremor in his voice.
Last night, after you told me everything, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the possibility that Kalen is really your son.
He is my son. 6 years ago, the same night my sister tried to get rid of me for good, she stole my baby.
Ethan Chen, looking directly at her.
If that's the truth, then it means Qiao Mei not only lied, she orchestrated something unspeakable. And
He paused, pressing his hand against his forehead.
I was foolish. I believed her for years when she told me the child was hers. Because that night, I'd been so drunk and depressed, I had no recollection. She made it sound like it was her in that room, not you.
Zhao Linlin's eyes shone with pent-up tears, She had carried this pain, this loneliness for so long.
I didn't know who the father was, only that my child had been taken. When I survived, I fled to keep from being silenced. It was Song Jin, my best friend, who nursed me back to health.
Ethan pushed away from the door, approached her, and set a gentle hand on her shoulder.
We'll get proof. We'll do a DNA test if we must. But first, I need to handle Chow Mei. Make sure she doesn't try anything else.
She's more dangerous than you know, but I'm not afraid.
A subtle tension passed between them, part compassion, part fear for what lay ahead. The top floor of a refurbished loft building, with large windows overlooking the bustle of Grand Avenue. Inside lived Song Jin, the man who'd saved Zhao Linlin's life years before. He was preparing herbal medicines in small porcelain cups, the fragrance of ginger and ginseng filling the space. A sharp knock at his door caught his attention. Opening it, he found a poised black woman in a fitted blazer and LAPD badge at her waist. Her name was Detective Eliana Carter, known for her thorough investigations into high-profile cases around the city. Detective Carter, polite but professional.
Mr. Songjin, I'm sorry to bother you so early. I'm with the LAPD Major Crimes Division. There's an ongoing investigation related to suspicious deaths tied to the Zhou family. I hear you might have information.
Song Jin set down his teapot, eyebrows lifting with surprise. He had expected to work behind the scenes, covertly examining medical records, but clearly the authorities had caught wind of the rumor that Zhou Shiyue's passing wasn't natural.
You're investigating the Zhou family? May I ask what evidence led you here?
I've got testimonies that point to poison and cover-ups. That's big news in a city like LA, especially when a powerful family is involved. A recent confession note implicates a possible murder.
A flicker of realization crossed Song Jin's face. The confession from Gong Quanjun, the man who had once helped the Zhou family commit their crimes, must have leaked.
Yes, I've got some medical records. And I know the daughter, Zhou Mu, who was also targeted. But if you're stepping into this, you should know these people will do anything to stay in power.
Detective Carter took out a notebook.
Then I'll do whatever it takes to uncover the truth. I owe that much to your friend and to the memory of her mother.
Meanwhile, across town at a Beverly Hills cafe, a sleek Mercedes pulled up to the curb. Out stepped Zhou Xiaomei, wearing oversized sunglasses, her expensive bag slung over one shoulder. She had asked to meet with her father, Zhou Shengjun, who was out on bail after a separate indictment. They chose a discreet back table overlooking a small fountain, hoping for privacy. Zhou Qiaomei, agitated, eyes darting.
Dad, everything is falling apart. That detective keeps poking around. And Ethan, he's discovered the truth about that night.
Zhou Shengjun's expression was pinched. He sipped his coffee, frustration simmering under the surface. Zhou Shengjun, in a low hiss.
You lost your grip, Chow Mei. We should have silenced your half-sister years ago. If only your mother Li Lan and I had been more careful.
At the mention of Li Lan, Chow Mei winced. Her mother was now in custody, rumors swirling that her involvement in poisoning Zhou Mu's mother, Zhou Shiyue, was about to be laid bare.
She's not unstoppable. I still have ways to corner Zhou Mu, or Zhao Linlin, whatever she calls herself. She wants that boy, Kailin. If I take him, she'll have to negotiate.
Zhou Shengjun, gripping her wrist forcefully.
Don't be reckless, kidnapping a child in broad daylight in Los Angeles. The LAPD, the FBI, even the press will be all over us.
She snatched her hand back, a desperate light in her eyes.
I'll do what I must. I'm not going to lose everything. Dad, you'd do the same if you were cornered.
He set his jaw, not answering. They had come too far with too many sins. There was no easy way out now. Towering over the urban sprawl, the Chen logo gleamed high on the glass facade. In the executive suite, Ethan Chen sat at a broad desk, scanning multiple computer screens. Shen Kai, his loyal assistant, stood at his side. Shen Kai, clearing his throat.
Mr. Chen, the data from the paternity test is in. It's conclusive. Kylan is...
Ethan Chen, holding up a hand to stop him.
I know. I always suspected.
His heart twisted. Knowing for certain changed everything.
Lin Lin, Zhou Mu. She was telling the truth from the start. Chiao Mei deceived me.
He rose from his seat, his reflection in the polished windows behind him. So many years wasted, so much heartbreak inflicted.
Schedule a press conference. I'll announce that the engagement with the Zhou family is void. I'm also going to publicly recognize Zhou Mu.
Shenkai's eyebrows shot up in mild shock, but he nodded.
Of course, Mr. Chen. But you realize this will spark immediate retaliation from the Zhou side.
Ethan Chen, with a tinge of anger in his voice.
Let them try. I'm done playing along.
Later that day, in a sunny courtyard near Pasadena, Zhao Linlin met her brother, Zhou Cheng, for a quiet conversation. Zhou Cheng had only recently taken the reins of Zhou Corporation from their father's corrupt hold. With the documents Linlin provided, he had ousted their father from the board, shining a light on years of embezzlement and crime. Zhou Cheng, relieved grin.
Mumu, I mean Lin Lin. I never thought I'd see the day. You were once so timid, but now you're ready to face them all.
Zhao Linlin, smiling, though tension lay beneath.
I just want justice for Mom. I want to ensure Kylan never faces the same horrors I did.
A shadow flickered across her features. She recalled the terror of that hospital. 6 years ago, the taste of poison, the sight of her newborn disappearing from her arms.
Chung, I have to ask you something. If Chiao Mei tries to harm us again, can I count on you for help?
Zhou Cheng nodded firmly.
You're my twin sister. No matter what twisted lengths Chiao Mei goes to, she won't get past me. I'll protect you, and Kaylin,
She exhaled as though a weight lifted from her shoulders. For so long, she'd felt alone. Having her brother at her side changed the game. That very night, in a hush of tension and conspiracy, Chen Manor was quiet. Too quiet. Zhao Linlin couldn't sleep, haunted by the same question. Where was Chiao Mei? She hadn't appeared since morning. Meanwhile, Kailin snored softly in the next room, oblivious to the swirling fears of the adults. Suddenly, glass shattered downstairs. Zhao Linlin jolted upright. She dashed toward Kailin's room, heart hammering, only to collide with Ethan in the hallway.
Stay behind me. I heard something. Like a window breaking.
Kaylin, let's get to him first.
They sprinted to the child's bedroom. Kaylin stood near his bed, wide-eyed with confusion and fear. Kaylin, voice shaking.
Mom, Dad, what's going on?
Stay close to us, sweetheart.
From the darkness downstairs, a frantic voice echoed.
Zhou Mu, Ethan, where are you? Hand me that boy or I swear I'll...
Before she could finish, the overhead lights flicked on. Shen Kai and 2 security guards rushed in, weapons drawn. Chiao Mei's eyes blazed with desperate madness. She clutched something, a small pistol, trembling in her hand.
Chiao Mei, put that down. You have no idea what you're doing.
Stay back, all of you. Don't make me do something I can't take back.
Zhao Linlin gently pushed Kailin behind her, shielding the child with her own body.
You've done enough harm, Chiao Mei. It ends here. If you hurt Kaylin, I'll never forgive you. And neither will the law.
Chiao Mei's grip tightened, her knuckles white. A million emotions flickered across her face: envy, fury, regret. For a brief, terrifying moment, she seemed poised to aim the gun at them all, but then footsteps pounded on the gravel outside. Lights from squad cars flashed through the windows. Detective Carter and her team, alerted by a silent alarm triggered by Shen Kai, burst in. Detective Carter, commanding.
LAPD, drop the weapon.
Startled, Chiao Mei whirled, the gun slipping from her hand. She went pale as 2 uniformed officers tackled her to the floor. Handcuffs clicked around her wrists. Zhou Chiao Mei, broken whisper.
No, I only wanted my place back.
As she was dragged to her feet, her tears mingled with bitterness. Gone was the arrogant facade. Now she was just a desperate figure who had lost everything. Moments later, hush settled over the living room. Zhao Linlin and Ethan Chen clutched Kailin, who trembled from the commotion. Detective Carter conferred with Shen Kai and the rest of the security team, verifying statements. Detective Carter, softening her tone.
Mr. Chen, Miss Zhou, I'm glad we arrived in time. We have enough to charge Xiao Mei with attempted kidnapping, assault, and likely more. There's also the matter of Miss Zhou Xiyue's death. Xiao Mei's involvement won't stay hidden any longer.
Zhao Linlin stroked Kailin's hair, relief and sorrow mixing in her eyes. This was the moment she had dreamed of, justice creeping ever closer. Yet the cost weighed heavily. Her sister, though evil in her actions, had just thrown her life away in a final, desperate act.
Thank you, Detective. If you need statements, anything, we'll cooperate fully.
We'll take the official report soon. For now, get some rest. You've all been through an ordeal.
With that, the police departed, Xiao Mei's wails echoing through the night air. House staff scrambled to sweep shattered glass, and paramedics checked everyone for injuries. Finally, an uneasy calm descended on the mansion's corridors. The city lights of L.A. twinkled beyond the panoramic windows, so close, yet a world away from this private chaos. Later, in the family lounge, Ethan Chen brewed tea with shaking hands. Zhao Linlin, exhausted, sat with Kailin curled in her lap. The boy dozed off, lulled by the presence of both parents by his side, something he had never truly experienced until now. Ethan Chen, rubbing tired eyes.
Are you all right?
Zhao Linlin, stroking Kailin's hair.
I am just overwhelmed. This fight isn't over. There's still the trial, and the question of my father's involvement.
He reached over and gently covered her hand with his. Their eyes met with unspoken understanding. Two people wounded by the same betrayal, yet brought together by a boy they both cherished. Ethan Chen with a new resolve.
We'll fight it together. I promise.
She nodded, feeling a warmth in her chest she hadn't known in years, a sense of partnership, perhaps even love. But it was too soon to give it a name. For now, it was enough that they were on the same side. Concrete walls and harsh overhead lights. Zhou Xiaomei, in a gray jumpsuit, sat alone at a metal table. Across from her was her father, Zhou Shengjun, also dressed in inmate attire. They stared at each other through strained silence.
Look at what you've done. We lost Zhou Corporation. Your mother's in custody, and you've made an enemy of Ethan Chen, of all people.
Don't lecture me. You taught me to take what I wanted. I just took it too far.
A heavy pause. Zhou Xiaomei, barely a whisper.
Dad, do you think there's any forgiveness left for us?
His hands clenched into fists on the table, but he had no answer. They both knew too many sins had piled up, overshadowing any chance of redemption. Back at the Chen estate, the day broke with a fresh sunrise, warm rays illuminating the living room where Zhao Linlin woke on the couch, Kailin's small hand still nestled in hers. She watched Ethan step in quietly from the kitchen, balancing 2 cups of coffee.
Morning. I made these for us.
She accepted the cup, breathing in the rich aroma. For a moment, they allowed themselves the illusion of normalcy, a quiet morning with family, unburdened by betrayal or tragedy. But they both knew that illusions can break as easily as glass. The real test lay ahead. How they would confront the upcoming trial, the corporate fallout, and the final pieces of truth still lurking in the shadows. Still, as they shared a tentative smile, it felt like a new beginning. By the time a hazy orange sun set over the Pacific, the city of Los Angeles was abuzz with talk of the Zhou family scandal. Local TV anchors debated conspiracies in lavish boardrooms. Talk radio hosts ranted about corporate crime and nepotism. In the midst of this media storm, the people most affected, Zhou Mu, known until recently as Zhao Linlin, Ethan Chen, and their son Kailin, faced a final reckoning that would determine all their futures. A white stone edifice standing proudly near the city's civic center. Lawyers, reporters, and onlookers milled outside, forming a knot of hushed anticipation. Today's court hearing would shape the fate of Zhou Shengjun, Li Lan, and Zhou Xiaomei, the 3 conspirators behind the plot to poison Zhou Mu's mother, Zhou Xiyue. and seize control of the family corporation. Court officer, firmly, over murmuring crowds. All rise. The Superior Court of California, County of Los Angeles, is now in session. The Honorable Judge Ramirez presiding. In the hushed courtroom, Jo Mu seated herself beside her brother, Jo Chung. Song Jin, the friend who rescued Jo Mu and uncovered medical evidence, sat behind them, ready to be called as a witness. Across the aisle sat the defendants. Jo Chao-mei, face pale, hands cuffed, avoided Jo Mu's gaze. Her father, Jo Sheng-jun, glared at the floor as though wishing the ground would open and swallow him. Li Lan, Chao-mei's mother, sat quietly, eyes darting in fear. Nearby, Ethan Chen, stoic in a dark suit, kept his attention focused on Jo Mu and Kylan, who sat with a child advocate in a separate row. Despite all the turmoil, Kylan clung to a stuffed bear, an odd comfort in this adult world of lawyers and retribution. One by one, the prosecution called witnesses. Detective Eliana Carter, who testified to the attempted kidnapping at the Chen mansion. Song Jin, who presented incriminating medical files explaining how the victim, Jo Shiyue, showed signs of slow-acting poison rather than simple illness. Jo Mu herself, calm but emotional, describing the night she gave birth, the terror, the betrayal, and her miraculous survival.
I remember my sister smiling as she held a poisoned cup. I pleaded for my child's life, but she took him. She and my father did this, while my mother lay dying under suspicious circumstances.
Gasps rippled through the onlookers. Judge Ramirez swiftly restored order. Judge Ramirez.
Ms. Zhou, we appreciate your honesty. You've been through unimaginable trauma.
When the defense rose to speak, they offered half-hearted excuses. Li Lan insisted she was merely desperate for recognition. Jo Sheng-jun blamed bad influences and corporate stress. Jo Chao-mei, once so brazen, was now a shadow of herself, stammering apologies that rang hollow. But the evidence was overwhelming. Bank statements showed Li Lan's gambling debts funded by Jo family accounts. Taped recordings revealed father and daughter discussing the plan to eliminate Jo Shiyue. Even Jo Chao-mei's confession about kidnapping Kylan had been caught on Detective Carter's body cam. A tense silence filled the courtroom as the jury filed in. Foreperson, unfolding the paper. In the matter of the people versus Jo Sheng-jun, Li Lan, and Jo Chao-mei. On the charges of conspiracy to commit murder, murder in the first degree, attempted kidnapping, we find the defendants guilty on all counts. A crescendo of relief, sobs, and whispered astonishment washed over those gathered. Jo Mu felt Jo Chung's hand grip hers, tears threatening to spill down her cheeks. Years of hidden terror had culminated in this moment of justice. Across the aisle, Chao-mei sagged against the bailiff, Li Lan wailed, and Jo Sheng-jun crumpled under the weight of his crimes.
Sentencing will be scheduled. Until then, the defendants are remanded to custody. Court is adjourned.
A swift bang of the gavel sealed their fate. Enjoyed the twists and turns? Let us know by hitting the like button. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed, reporters shouted. But Ethan Chen shielded Kylan's face as security guided them to an SUV. Jo Mu followed with a quiet dignity, ignoring the barrage of questions. Reporter calling out, "Miss Jo Mu, now that you've reclaimed your identity, are you returning to run Jo Corporation?" Zhao Linlin, Zhao Mu, gently but firmly.
Please excuse us. No comment for now.
The car pulled away, leaving behind a sea of reporters eager for the next big headline. A tall tower of gleaming glass, now under the legitimate leadership of Jo Chung. In a large conference room with a panoramic view of the city, the board of directors gathered. Jo Mu, wearing a simple, elegant blouse and skirt, entered, accompanied by her brother. Jo Chung, addressing the board.
As you know, the rightful heir was always my sister, Jo Mu. But due to the traumatic events she's endured and her own personal wishes, I'll continue as acting chairman with her blessing.
Heads nodded in respectful acknowledgement. Then all eyes turned to Joe Moo.
Joe Corporation was founded on my mother's vision. Her legacy of integrity and innovation will guide us forward. I trust my brother to uphold that vision, and I'll support him however I can.
Polite applause swelled in the room. She and Joe Chung exchanged a grateful smile. For the first time, their mother's dream felt genuinely safe. Later that afternoon, Joe Moo made her way to a sleek private office set aside for her. She found a box of personal belongings once owned by her mother, photographs, handwritten notes, even an old diary. Gently, she sifted through them. One photograph showed Zhou Shiyue smiling beside a younger version of Zhou Shengjun, a time before bitterness and greed took over.
Maybe in another life, we could have all been happy.
A familiar voice caught her ear. She turned to see Ethan Chen at the doorway, wearing a gentle smile.
Hey, I knocked, but the door was open.
She rose, her eyes lighting up.
Did you bring Kalen with you?
He's at the tech lab next floor down, apparently debugging some software for our new gaming partnership. 5 years old and already a tiny genius.
The mention of their son warmed her heart. She slipped the photo back into the box.
Kalen's the best thing that ever happened to me. To us. I just wish I could have been there for all his firsts.
Ethan approached, gently taking her hand.
We can't change the past, but we can shape the future. Together.
Her lips curved into a soft smile. Suddenly, with a hint of nervousness, Ethan withdrew a small velvet pouch from his pocket.
I was going to do this later, maybe in a more fancy way, but waiting longer feels pointless. Zhou Mu, Lin, will you marry me?
She drew a stunned breath, her hand flying to her mouth. Inside the pouch lay a delicate ring featuring a minimalist design with subtle jade accents, an homage to her heritage, to her mother's memory, to everything she'd endured.
Ethan, are you sure? After all that's happened?
His eyes shone with unwavering sincerity.
I've never been more certain of anything. I love you. Let's start fresh. With Kalen, as a family.
Tears brimmed in her eyes, this time from joy rather than sorrow.
Yes, I'd love that.
He slipped the ring onto her finger. They shared a tender embrace, both feeling the weight of their past finally melting into something hopeful and new. An intimate gathering of friends and loved ones, sprawled across manicured lawns under a canopy of twinkling string lights. In the center stood a simple altar adorned with peach and white roses. The sweet scent mingled with the gentle hum of conversation. It was Ethan Chen and Zhou Mu's wedding day, or perhaps more aptly, their vow renewal and official union, recognized now by both the law and their hearts. Among the small gathering, Song Jin, smiling broadly, offering herbal well-wishes. Joe Chung, standing beside his sister, proud and protective. Detective Carter, invited as a friend who had helped bring justice. She quietly accepted thanks from everyone she'd aided. A few other guests, either from Chen Enterprises or from the newly stabilized Joe Corporation. Kylan, dressed in an adorable little tux, was beaming. He held a pillow on which rested the wedding bands. Efficient, clearing her throat, smiling at the couple. We've gathered here to celebrate the union of Ethan Chen and Zhou Mu, two individuals who've journeyed through adversity and found their way to each other. As the sun began its gentle descent, painting the sky in rose-gold hues, Ethan and Zhou Mu recited personal vows, words laced with gratitude, love, and the promise of a future unshackled by secrets.
I vow to cherish the family we've built, Kalen, you, and everything we stand for. The past won't define us anymore.
I vow to live without fear, to embrace the joy we've earned. No more hidden identities, no more running. I'm here with you.
They exchanged rings, laughter, and tears mingling among the guests. Kalian practically bounced on the balls of his feet, brimming with excitement. Officiant, beaming. By the power vested in me by the state of California, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may seal your vows with a kiss." Soft applause and cheers broke out as Ethan and Joe Moo kissed under the warm California sunset, the entire city of Los Angeles stretching below them like a silent witness to their triumph over tragedy. Days later, the local news cycle had largely moved on. Scandal had given way to the next big story, and the tabloids found new headlines to exploit. But in a serene backyard in the Hollywood Hills, life was finally peaceful. Kylene sat at a laptop coding a small game that featured a tiny cartoon detective chasing villains who looked suspiciously like Chiao Mei and Zhou Shengjun. He giggled whenever he made them trip over comedic obstacles. Zhou Mu, no longer hiding behind any alias, tended to potted plants and fresh flowers, an activity that reminded her of her mother, Zhou Shiyue, who had once grown a garden on a Zhou estate in Beijing. She felt closer to her mother's spirit with each blossoming bud. Ethan Chen, now balancing fatherhood and business, took a call from the board of Chen Enterprises. As he hung up, he gazed across the yard at his wife and child and found himself smiling. The Chen Empire, once built on duty and a solitary sense of ambition, now had a heart and soul. Nearby, Zhou Chung could be heard on speakerphone discussing philanthropic projects to honor their late mother's name, community clinics, coding workshops for underprivileged youth in Los Angeles, bridging the gap between wealth and want. And so, the tapestry of fate that once bound these individuals in pain and secrecy was at last rewoven into a story of justice, reconciliation, and fresh beginnings. Zhou Mu and Ethan Chen found their long-denied happiness, united by the miraculous child that had survived betrayal and heartbreak. Zhou Chung carried on the legacy of their mother with integrity and compassion. Song Jin, having aided in the healing of both body and heart, continued his mission in holistic medicine, offering hope to those who needed it most. In the City of Angels, where lofty dreams can be shattered by greed or soared to by hope, this family forged a new path, proof that sometimes even the deepest wounds can mend with the power of truth and love. The sunlight fell across their intertwined hands, illuminating what lay ahead, a horizon no longer marred by shadows, but lit by the promise of second chances. If you enjoyed this story, there's another video on screen right now. Go ahead and give it a look for an even more astonishing tale. And don't forget, we'll have many more uplifting and dramatic stories coming your way, so make sure you subscribe to our channel. That way, you'll never miss our newest uploads.